Welcome to Naturalist Diary Doc, and thank you for taking out time and talking to us today. So on the birth anniversary of Dr. Salim Ali, we would like to cherish his memories and remember him through you. So let's start the discussion.
My earliest memories with Salim Ali were when he was doing his work on bias and used to come to Pune every weekend. And I would be waiting for it because that was an opportunity to get onto his very beautiful motorcycle.
Oh,
He had a beautiful motorcycle and I didn't know anything about birds. I was a very small schoolboy. And he would take me on his motorcycle, and I remember going to places like Pashan and Katras Ghat, and especially where there were bionists. And very surprisingly, though I lived in the middle of what was the town of Pune, there was a field next to my house. There was a Bajra Jawar field, and
Wow.
there was a well, and there were bias right there. And so many of the things that I did with him were actually looking at bias there, where I never understood anything, but I used to wait for that motorcycle, right? That was very, very exciting for me as a boy. Salim Ali was very fond of motorcycles, and he was very good at it.
wow.
And it was a large motorcycle, and sometimes there was no back seat. I had to sit on a metal seat. So, but it was great fun being with him out in the field, and that's what I remember most about him. But most people think of him as a scientist, which he was. He was a very great scientist. He was not just an ornithologist. He was one of the early conservation scientists with a deep insight into what we should be doing with nature. And that, I think, was for that period of time was very, very unique. And many people haven't even realized this much later, that what he did and said and what he got done
Right.
through good advocacy was very unique for that period.
So having a deep admiration towards his work, how did he influence your life?
Well, in many, many ways. He was my friend, philosopher, guide throughout the time that I knew him. Starting as a small boy, he was for me Salim Uncle, and then he became Dr. Salim Ali, and then he became Sir. And I remember very well when I started calling him Sir for the first time, because everybody else referred to him as Sir. He started referring to me as Dr. Sai. And he used to, and Salim Ali, apart from being such a great scientist, had an incredible sense of humor.
Wow.
He was a living humorist, and it always happened extremely spontaneously. Of course, I have many, many very strange memories of that. And he influenced me, since you asked me about that, in many different ways. But I think the most important thing that he did for me was that I would go and tell him, I would show him some slide, or I would show him some picture, or recount something I had seen about ornithology.
Right.
Some small thing like sunbirds feeding painted cuckoos at a nest or something, which he knew about. And he would value that. And he would call his secretary, her name was Archana, bring a pen and paper. Dr. Guru said, writing a note for the PNHS journal. And he would make me sit there and write it in front of him.
Wow.
And that changed my approach from being just a happy bird watcher enjoying things, right, into thinking that yes, even small observations are important. And Salim Ali for the BNHS journal valued these small notes from many, many other people. And I think today when you look back at the old BNHS journals, you get things out of that which contrast with what is happening today.
Right.
And I think that was something that he taught me very much. And he was very good that way.
Amazing. So what other interactions did you have with him? Any specific memories with him?
So I think for me one of the most important things in terms of having lived my life in many ways very close to Sai was that he pulled me into the BNHS. For many, many years, I used to go to meet him at the BNHS mornings, and I would be given one cheese sandwich and one small banana.
Wow.
And there were many things we talked about. It wasn't only about birds, and it was a great pleasure for me to sit there. And I honestly, as a school and as a college student when I went there, I hadn't realized this magnificent personality. I mean, for me, he was Salivankal or whatever in those days. And today, when I look back, I realize what a huge influence he was on my life. And I remember very well when one day he phoned me and said, I want you to join the BNHS. And I said, sir, I am a member. He said, no, I want you to join the executive committee.
Oh, amazing.
There were all these, for me, very big people on the society. I said, sir, I don't think I can do this. And he said, no, I'm sending Dr. Nanavati to meet you tomorrow. Dr. Nanavati was at that time the secretary of the BNHS. And he came the next day with a form and he said, Salimali has asked you to sign on this. And I said, I don't think I can do this. I mean, what am I was just a young lecturer in surgery. And as a surgeon, for me, this was my hobby and my pleasure and my passion. But that changed my life. And for me, even today, the BNHS has been a very, very important part of my life.
Surely.
And that's where we are today. And that was Salimali. I would have never otherwise thought of doing something like this. And I learned so much. I learned so much from Salim himself over the years, but also from the other scientists there, because I would have to drive to Bombay for these meetings. So I would leave early in the morning and I would go and sit with Vijay or Hussain, and they would tell me about their work experience, and that was delightful. So I learned so much from the BNHS and from the society and from the library.
Doc, the Muramurtao Sanctuary of Pune was renamed after Dr. Salim Ali, and you were involved in that. So would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a very, very strange story actually. I had been going to this part of the Muramurtao for many, many years, taking bird pictures and whatever. There used to be in winter, there could be as many as 5,000 waterfowl at one point in time. So I used to go and take pictures there. And one day, a group of ladies from Koregaon Park came to me and said, oh, you know Salim Ali, and you know there is this place, can we make it into some sort of sanctuary? And I said, look, I know that Salim Ali doesn't sort of feel comfortable about doing things like this. So they said, no, you please write to it. So I wrote to Salim Bhai, and Salim Bhai wrote back saying, tell these ladies to fight their own battles. But because they wanted to protect this area. But finally he got convinced that he came here, and there was WWF people there as well. And he really appreciated the place. He thought this was a very good idea to have an open green space like this with so much waterfowl. And that was the birth of WWF in Pune as the branch of WWF. And for years thereafter, he would always ask me, how is that sanctuary going? And he would ask about things like that. He was very interested in making people understand. And I think that was a huge asset. So today we talk about SEPA, communication, education, public awareness. Salim Bhai was doing it way back then, very, very consciously. In fact, I don't know whether many people know that the first job that Salim Ali had was as a nature educator in the BNHS.
Wow.
And there are photographs of him actually taking blind children to the museum and making them feel animals to say what that animal was. Now this is a part of education which we are not even able to do today.
Right.
And this man was doing it in the early 1900s.
Wow.
So this was the vision of the man. He had an enormous vision. So that was how this little place came about. And it did get protected to a certain extent, but today Pune has surrounded it all around it. And there's a metro and a whole lot of other things. But there are many such areas which happened because of Salim Ali. I mean, everybody knows about Silent Valley. But there were so many others in which he did very strong advocacy to make things happen. I remember running a small thing called the Pakshi Mitra Sammelan in Maharashtra. And we did that year after year. And every time Salim Bhai would come and address us. And I remember going once to Nasik with him like that. I remember him talking near Sholapur and at Ujni as well for a short time. But I think the important one was at Sholapur, in the wetland there, where the forest department had said, no, we can't make this into a sanctuary. And Salim Ali said, well, maybe I will talk during the introduction about it. And he turned to the forest person there, who was probably conservator or something, and said, you know, if you make this place into a sanctuary, people will remember you forever. And this place became a sanctuary. So
Wow.
there were so many memories of him doing so many little things which showed where his heart was.
It was really interesting to understand how he contributed in conservation in various ways. What was your interactions with him about SACON, the Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural History?
Well, that was long before SACON was even born. And I remember once going to meet him at his home, and he said, you know, Iraj, I'm always worried about my scientists, that they go from one project to a next, and they sometimes don't know whether they will continue to have a salary. And he was very concerned about this. And probably that was how he had spent his whole life himself. And that must have bothered him, but he never ever said so. But he was worried about these scientists. And he said, you know, we need a center which is permanent, where you get permanent people who will always have a job in conservation. And I think that was the birth of this idea in his mind. And, I had several talks with him. In fact, eventually I was also sent to select the site and so on.
Wow.
For the BNHS as to where SACON should be. And today it's a beautiful place. And of course you also get elephants there.
Yes.
Quite something. So yeah, it was not for himself. It was something that he wanted for permanency for his scientists who he was so closely attached to. And so many young people have made so much progress from that
Right.
cycle.
We have a really exciting news for everyone that the new book of yours on Salim Ali is about to launch. So would you like to tell us about that?
Well, I thought about many people when I gave slideshows or talks, and people said, and I talked about Salim Ali and his influence on my life, and they said, why don't you write about this? And quite some time I thought, I don't have a role to play to do something like that for somebody so large. But eventually I thought maybe I should write some of his quips, some of his humorous things that he always came out with. And I made a list of those things. And I talked about this to J.C. Daniels so many years back, and he said, oh no, you must do this. And for one reason or another, I never could do it. But finally I thought that there were so many other people like myself whose lives were influenced by this great man. And that is what I thought should come out. And the fact that he and the BNHS were just one thing, one organization.
Inseparable.
And they were inseparable, yes. And you could not really understand this divide about who's Salim Ali and what is the BNHS. And so eventually I collected things which other people have said. And for a long time it has been lying with me and I couldn't do anything about it. But, well, yes, I thought about writing it this year and I said, maybe I should do that. So I put some things together and let's see when it comes out.
What would you say to the newer generation of bird watchers?
Wow. Yeah, I have a lot to say to bird watchers. And how they get into this field. And that today it's just more than doing a little bird watching and having fun as a tourist or whatever. Or as a bird photographer, as I also done. And that has changed now. Today our young people are really citizen scientists. And what they should look forward to in this is how do they use this citizen science to make it obvious to a larger number of people. This is communicating what they want to do. But also authenticating things and very reliably talking about it. And in this, the most important thing is ethics and the truth of what you want to say and what you want to do. And this is something which is very important. And Salim Ali really, I'd like to go back to Salim Ali, really epitomized this. And years ago, when he produced this book, for example, which when I went to him during the inauguration of the book, and I said, "So would you sign my copy for me?"
Oh, wow.
And he smiled at me and he took out his own pen. I had forgotten to take a pen, so he took out his own pen and he signed it. And then again, I very often told him, as many others did, especially Hawkins, who told him that Salim Ali, you've had such a rich life, and it's important for people to know about this. And years later, Salim Bhai came out with The Fall of a Sparrow, and when I went to him with this book, and I said, "Sir, will you please sign it for me?" And he smiled at me and he said, "Yeah, you pushed it, didn't you?" And he said this to many people because so many people, he called these people his friends and admirers, or his friends and fans, or something like that.
Wow.
And when his books first came out, when his bird books first came out, his guides, there was nothing else you could read. But I must tell you, young bird watchers today, the book for you to read is the 13 volumes.
Right.
Because there is so much information in this, which is not available in the guides of today. And that's where you should go. And of course, he encouraged everybody to write, but he also encouraged everybody to do things.
This is important.
He was a trigger for many, many people to do things. I have many such stories.
Wow.
You know, many people, young bird watchers, young students, young school kids, my MSc students from Bharati Vidyapeeth, they always ask me, "Sir, what do you think we should be doing?" And one of the things that I've always felt makes a difference in people's lives is joining the Bombay Naturalist Society. It means that we are doing something to communicate to a larger number of people. It's also an educative experience, and it's also very importantly leads to public awareness. And that is what we refer to as CEPA, Communication, Education, Public Awareness, which is the first Aichi target and one of the important SDGs. And this is something which is valuable. So I would encourage all of you to join this society. It's an ancient, old society. And it has done so much. And Salim Ali did so much for this society. And those two, as I said earlier, were inseparable. And this is something that all you young people can actually contribute in terms of this hobby of yours, which is which is of course, it's a wonderful experience to be part of this whole group of people who love nature. And the most important thing in this is to love nature. You may have all the science in the world, but unless you have this heart for making conservation happen, it's not satisfying. What is most satisfying is loving nature. So thank you for having me here today. It's been a very nice experience. Thank you so much.